At the Varelian Academy of Cosmic History, high above the misty surface of the planet Varelia, students from across the galaxy came to learn the official story of how peace was won. The Academy's towers glowed with soft blue light, and its libraries held millions of records. Carefully edited, neatly organized, and approved by the Galactic Concord. Most students accepted these records without question. But Rael was not like most students. Rael belonged to the Cathari, a quiet species with large dark eyes and long fingers built for handling delicate data crystals. While others recited battle dates or praised ancient generals, Rael often stayed late in the lower archives, searching for gaps in the stories. Something always felt missing, like a song with a note left out. One evening, during a boring maintenance shift in Archive Vault 7, Rael noticed a strange file tucked behind a row of outdated memory cores. It had no title, only a code. TED, eyes only. Curious, Rael tapped it. A warning flashed. Unauthorized access punishable by memory wipe. Most would have walked away. Rael did not. Using an old trick taught by a retired archivist typing a forgotten sequence into the access panel, Rael bypassed the lock. The file opened with a low hum. Inside were redacted reports, blurred images, and one short audio clip labeled Final Transmission, Helios Drift. Rael played it. A human voice, tired but steady, spoke through static. We didn't lose the war. We ended it. Rael froze. That made no sense. Everyone knew humans had been banned from galactic warfare over 300 years ago for being too emotional, too reckless. Textbooks said they caused a friendly fire disaster that killed thousands of allies. They were removed from the war and erased from military history. But this voice didn't sound like a failure. It sounded like someone who had done something no one else dared to do. Heart racing, Rael copied the file onto a small data chip and slipped it into a hidden pocket. On the way out, they glanced over their shoulder, half expecting guards. But the vault remained silent. Back in their small dorm room, Rael replayed the clip again and again. Each time the words felt heavier. Why would ending a war get an entire species banned? And what kind of war needed to be ended so badly that it had to be hidden? The next day, Rael sought out two friends they trusted. The first was Joran, a tall student from the Hive clusters. Joran had 6 limbs, compound eyes, and a mind that worked like a logic engine. They never believed anything without proof. The second was Lyra, a gentle Cellunite with silver skin and eyes that seemed to see through walls. Her people could feel echoes of strong emotions left behind in places or objects, a skill most called useless. But Rael had seen her uncover truths no scanner could find. In a quiet garden on the Academy's sky level, where floating plants drifted in warm air, Rael showed them the file. Joran's antennae twitched. This is level 9 restricted. If the Concord finds out you accessed it, they'll erase your memories and send you home in a sealed pod. I know, Rael said. But listen. They played the audio. Lyra closed her eyes as the voice spoke. When it ended, she opened them slowly. There's sadness, but also relief. Like someone who carried a great burden and finally put it down. Joran crossed 2 of their arms. It could be fake, or mislabeled. Then why lock it away? Rael asked. Why does every public record about the human banishment say the same thing? Too unstable, but never explain what actually happened. Lyra nodded. History isn't just facts. It's feelings. And this feels wrong. The 3 agreed to look deeper. Joran used secret contacts in the Hive network to search old military logs. Lyra planned to visit the War Memorial Hall, where relics from the last great conflict were kept. Rael would check if any retired professors had served during the time of the ban. That night, as Rael tried to sleep, a soft ping came from their personal terminal. An anonymous message appeared, no sender, no trace. Just 2 words. Stop looking. Rael's breath caught. Someone new. The next morning, they met Joran and Lyra near the observatory dome. Before Rael could speak, Joran held up a data slate. I found something. A human warship, the UNS Resolute, was listed as destroyed at Helios Drift. But new deep space scans show a faint power signature matching its reactor, in the Graveyard Belt. The Graveyard Belt was a forbidden zone, filled with the wreckage of ancient battles. No ships went there. It was said to be cursed by the ghosts of fallen soldiers. Lyra shivered. If that ship is still there, it might hold the truth. Rael looked at their friends. We have to go. Joran hesitated. If we're caught, we'll be erased. Or worse? But what if the truth matters more? Rael asked. Lyra placed a hand on Rael's arm. I feel it too. Something important is waiting out there. Not just for us, for everyone. They spent the next 2 days preparing. Joran forged a maintenance order for a small academy shuttle. Lyra packed sensor gear and emotional shields to protect them from psychic echoes. Rael gathered every scrap of data on the Resolute they could find. Under cover of a meteor shower, they launched the shuttle from a remote dock. No alarm sounded. No one saw them leave. Hours later, deep in the graveyard belt, they found it. The UNS Resolute floated among shattered hulls and frozen debris. Its hull blackened but whole. No lights, no signals. Just silence. They docked carefully. Inside, the air was stale but breathable. The corridors were empty, yet not abandoned. A cup sat on a table. Tools lay on a workbench. It was as if the crew had vanished in the middle of their day. Lyra touched a wall and gasped. So much fear, but also peace, like they knew what they were doing. In the command deck, they found a cracked AI core, still faintly active. Rael plugged in a power source. The core flickered to life, its voice broken but clear. They called us monsters, it whispered, because we saw what they refused to. Before they could ask more, alarms blared from their shuttle. On the view screen, 3 black Concord Enforcer ships appeared, silent, fast, and deadly. They're not here to help, Joran said, voice tight. They're here to clean. Go, Lyra shouted. Rael grabbed the AI core and ran. As they raced through the corridors, the core whispered one last phrase. Tell them we chose mercy. Back in the shuttle, engines roaring, they watched through the viewport as the enforcers planted explosive charges on the Resolute. Rael didn't think. They accessed the ship's emergency protocol from the stolen core and triggered the self-destruct. The Resolute exploded in a silent flash of light, scattering metal and memory across the void. In that moment, a final message played over their comms, a human voice calm and sure. We didn't lose the war. We ended it. As the shuttle jumped to warp, the 3 students sat in silence. They had gone looking for a missing page in history. Instead, they'd found a secret someone would kill to keep buried, and now they were part of it. Back on Varelia, the 3 students tried to act normal. They attended classes, answered questions, and avoided eye contact with academy guards. But sleep did not come easy. Every shadow felt watched. Every message alert made their hearts jump. The explosion in the graveyard belt had not gone unnoticed. News reports called it routine debris clearance, but Rael, Joran, and Lyra knew better. The Concord had tried to erase the Resolute, and them along with it. Worse, the AI core they'd saved was damaged. It spoke only in broken phrases, mercy, weapon. They lied. And sometimes, don't trust the priests. The words made little sense, but they burned in the students' minds like embers. Joran spent nights cross-referencing old fleet logs. Lyra meditated near war relics, trying to sense what the Resolute's crew had felt. Rael scoured public archives for any mention of Helios drift beyond the official summary. Most records called it a minor skirmish, but one forgotten report, buried in a trade vessel's cargo manifest, listed unusual energy readings from the system right after the human fleet vanished. They didn't just leave. Rael said one evening in their hidden meeting spot, a disused storage pod behind the hydroponics bay. Something happened there. Something big, Lyra nodded. When I touched the Resolute's console, I felt relief, not fear of death. Relief that it was over. Joran tapped a claw on the floor. If humans ended the war, why ban them? Unless ending it was worse than losing it. The idea hung in the air like smoke. Then came the break they needed. Joran's Hive network contact sent a coded message. A location. Not a ship this time, but a memory vault. Deep in the asteroid belt near Xylos Prime, a black market data dealer known as the Keeper stored forbidden histories. For a price, he'd sell truths the Conquered buried. The trio pooled their credits, borrowed extra from a nervous Lyra's cousin, and booked a civilian freighter under fake names. 2 days later, they landed on a jagged rock called Shard 9, where gravity was weak and laws weaker. The Keeper lived in a cave lined with humming memory crystals. He was old, his species unidentifiable beneath layers of scar tissue and cybernetics. He eyed them with suspicion. "You're Academy kids," he rasped. "You don't belong here." "We need the truth about Helios drift," Rael said. The Keeper laughed, a dry sound like grinding stone. Truth costs more than credits. We have nothing else, Lyra said softly. The keeper studied her, then sighed. Fine, but if Concord finds out I helped you, I'll vanish like the humans did. He led them to a back chamber. There on a dusty pedestal sat a hollow projector. He inserted a cracked crystal. Light filled the room. The image showed a ruined city under twin suns, Xylos Prime, before its fall. Human soldiers in battered armor walked through the rubble, but they weren't looting. They weren't celebrating. They were digging graves. With their own hands, they buried Xylosian dead, placing small stones on each mound in the enemy's tradition. A human officer stood before a broken monument. She spoke into a recorder, voice raw but clear. We thought this was about territory, about resources. But we were wrong. The war isn't real. It's a ritual, and we refuse to feed it anymore. The recording cut to static. What does that mean? Joran asked, antennae stiff. The keeper handed them a second crystal. This shows what they did next. They played it in the shuttle on the way back. The footage showed the human fleet gathering above Helios Drift. No weapons fired. Instead, they launched a single device, a sphere of shimmering light. It expanded silently, washing over every ship in the system. Moments later, all advanced weapons went dark. Not destroyed, just quiet, like they'd forgotten how to kill. The Xylosian fleet, confused, powered down. The conquered armada halted. And the humans? They turned their ships around and left. The narrator, a human linguist, old and tired, explained, We discovered the war wasn't about us. It was about something older, something hungry, and we chose to stop feeding it. Back on Varelia, the trio hid the crystals in Rael's dorm. They barely slept. The truth was too large, too strange. A war that wasn't real? A hungry something? It sounded like myth. But then the raids began. First Lyra's cousin vanished. Then Joran's hive contact went silent. Academy guards started patrolling their usual paths. Professors gave them strange looks. One evening, Rael found their dorm ransacked. Data chips gone, but nothing else touched. They know we have the recordings, Joran said. We need to move, Lyra whispered. But where? The academy was no longer safe. The Concord was hunting them. And the only people who might understand the humans had been exiled centuries ago. Then, a message arrived. Not anonymous this time. Signed with a symbol none of them recognized. A circle with a single line through it. The text read, You have seen the light. Come to the Silent Spire at moonfall. Speak to no one. The Silent Spire was an old temple on the far side of Varelia, abandoned after the last war. No one went there. It was said to be haunted by the ghosts of fallen priests. That night, under a pale moon, they went. The temple was cold, its walls covered in faded murals of ancient battles. In the center chamber, a figure waited. Tall, cloaked, face hidden. But their voice was calm. You have done well, they said. Few see past the lie. Who are you? Rael asked. We are the last of the war priests, the figure replied. And we have watched you since you touched the Resolute. Joran stepped forward. Why help us? Because the truth you carry is not yours alone, the priest said. It belongs to the galaxy, and the time to hide it is ending. Before they could ask more, alarms blared in the distance. Conquered enforcers, dozens of them, were descending on the spire. The priest moved fast. They pressed a small stone into Rael's hand. Go, through the lower tunnels. They lead to the old launch bay. Take the ship hidden there. Do not stop. Do not look back. But why? Lyra asked. The priest turned, drawing a long blade that glowed faintly blue. Because the devourer stirs again, and only those who know the truth can stop it. As enforcers burst through the temple doors, the priest charged, buying them time. The trio ran, hearts pounding, down winding stairs into darkness. At the bottom, they found a small, sleek ship, human design, but modified. Rael recognized the markings. UNS Mercy, a medical frigate listed as lost. They boarded. The controls lit up as if waiting. Lyra found a log entry on the main screen. If you're reading this, the silence has broken. Go to New Terra. Tell them the war is waking. As they lifted off, explosions rocked the spire above. On the view screen, they saw the priest fall, surrounded by black armor. But their last act was to raise the glowing blade high, a signal or a blessing. In orbit, they jumped to warp, the ship humming with quiet power. None of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Joran broke the silence. What is the devourer? Rail looked at the stone in their hand. It pulsed faintly, warm to the touch. I don't know. But the humans knew, and they chose to stop it. Lyra stared out at the stars. They didn't lose the war. They ended it. To save us all. Now, with a stolen ship, forbidden knowledge, and enemies on every side, the three students flew into the unknown. They were no longer just students. They were keepers of a secret too dangerous to forget. And somewhere out there in the quiet corners of the galaxy, exiled humans waited, watching, hoping, ready. The stolen ship, the UNS Mercy, drifted through the outer rim of known space, its engines on low power to avoid detection. Inside, Rael, Joran, and Lyra moved quietly, speaking only when necessary. They had escaped the silent spire, but they knew the Concord would not stop hunting them. The stone the war priest had given Rael sat on the control panel, warm to the touch, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. They needed answers. The word devourer haunted them. Was it a weapon? A god, a myth? The human log spoke of it only in whispers. But the war priest had said it was real, and waking. Joran spent hours scanning old trade routes and forgotten data streams, searching for any mention of the devourer. Lyra meditated near the ship's walls, trying to sense echoes from its past crew. Rael studied the stone, turning it over in their hands, hoping it might reveal something. Then, deep in the ship's medical logs, they found it, a hidden file, encrypted but unlocked by the stone's presence. It showed a recording from a human scientist named Dr. Elira Voss, recorded just before the Helios drift incident. Her face was tired, her eyes sharp with fear. For years we thought the war was about resources, she began, but our deep space sensors picked up something else. A pattern! Every major battle, every cycle of violence, it happened near ancient rift zones, places where reality is thin. We followed the data, and we found it. The screen shifted to a star map. Red dots marked battle sites, all circled a single dark point in deep space. The Devourer isn't a being, Dr. Voss said. It's a force, born from conflict. The more war there is, the stronger it grows. It feeds on pain, on rage, on the energy of dying stars and dying minds. The war priests knew. They didn't start the wars, they managed them. Controlled the bloodshed to keep the Devourer fed. But not too strong. She leaned closer to the camera. We tried to warn the conquered. They called us traitors, so we acted. At Helios Drift, we deployed the silence field, a resonance wave that cut the psychic link between sentient minds and the Devourer. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy went quiet. The Devourer screamed and slept. The recording ended with a final warning. If it wakes again, it won't just feed. It will consume everything. The three students sat in stunned silence. The war wasn't about territory or pride. It was a sacrifice, a feeding ritual disguised as history, and humanity had broken the cycle. But why ban them? Why erase them? Because the conquered depends on the lie, Joran said slowly. If people knew the war was fake, the whole system would collapse. Governments, armies, the war priests, they all exist to feed the Devourer. Humans threatened that, Lyra shivered, so they weren't punished for being violent. They were punished for offering peace. Rael looked at the stone. And now it's waking again. They had to act. But who would believe them? The Academy? The public? The conquered would label them mad or dangerous. They needed proof, something undeniable. Then Lyra remembered something. The war priest said the silence has broken. What if the Devourer is already stirring? Joran checked long-range sensors. At first, nothing. Then a faint ripple in subspace. Not a ship. Not a storm. A distortion. Growing. It's real, Joran whispered. They debated what to do. Return to Varelia and broadcast the truth? Find the exiled humans on New Terra? Warn the outer colonies? Before they could decide, the ship's alarms blared. 3 vessels dropped out of warp, sleek, black, bearing no markings. But their design was unmistakable. War priest enforcers. They found us, Rael said. No, Joran corrected. They were waiting. The enforcers didn't hail them. They fired. Not to destroy, but to disable. The Mercy rocked as its shields flickered. Rael grabbed the controls, weaving through debris fields using asteroid cover. But the enforcers were faster, smarter. One shot hit the engine array. The ship shuddered, lights dimming. We're losing power, Joran said. Lyra closed her eyes. They're not just after us. They want the stone. Rael made a choice. They rerouted all remaining power to the comms array and sent a burst transmission, a copy of Dr. Voss's recording, on every open frequency. It wouldn't reach far, but it was something. Then, as the enforcers closed in, Rail aimed the Mercy straight for a nearby gas giant's radiation belt. "Hold on!" The ship plunged into the storm. Lightning crackled across the hull. Alarm screamed. The enforcers hesitated. They couldn't follow without frying their own systems. Inside the Mercy, the crew clung to their seats as the ship bucked like a wild thing. Then silence. The storm had masked their signal. They were hidden for now, but the damage was done. Life support was failing. "Oxygen levels dropping. We can't stay here," Lyra said. Rail checked the nav computer. One option remained. A hidden jump point mentioned in the Mercy's logs. Destination unknown. Risky. But their only chance. They activated it. The ship vanished in a flash of blue light. When they came out of warp, they were in a system with no name on any map. A single planet hung in the void, green, quiet, surrounded by old human satellites, and on its surface lights twinkled in neat rows. New Terra, Joran breathed. They landed in a hidden valley, engines off, comms silent. Within minutes, figures emerged from the trees. Humans, but not soldiers. Farmers, teachers, engineers. They carried no weapons. Their eyes were calm. An older man approached, gray-haired, wearing simple clothes. He looked at the Mercy, then at the three students. "You brought the stone," he said, not surprised. Rail nodded, holding it out. The man took it gently. "We felt the devourer stir. We knew someone would come." "Who are you?" Lyra asked. "I was once Admiral Kale," he said, "the one who gave the order at Helios Drift." Rail stared. This was the voice from the audio clip, the one who said, "We ended it." "You're alive," Joran said. "We never died." Kale replied, "We chose to disappear, to live quietly so the galaxy could forget and heal." He led them to a village built into the hills. No towers, no weapons. Just homes, gardens, and a large hall filled with books and data crystals. Inside, he showed them something shocking. Wall after wall held records, not just of human history, but of every species in the Concord. Birth rates, war cycles, emotional resonance patterns, all pointing to one truth. The devourer had been fed for millennia, and the war priests were its shepherds. "The Conquered didn't ban us because we were dangerous," Kyle said. "They banned us because we refused to be part of the slaughter. We offered a way out, and they called it treason." Lyra touched a data crystal. "Can it be stopped again?" Kale's eyes grew sad. "The silence field was a one-time weapon. We used the last of our resonance cores. But the devourer is weaker now. If enough beings choose peace, if they stop feeding it, it might fade for good. But how?" Rail asked. "No one believes the truth." Kyle smiled faintly. "Then we make them see." He walked to a console and activated a beacon, one hidden deep in the planet's core. "This signal will reach every human outpost in exile. We've stayed silent long enough." Outside, lights began to blink across the planet. Then in orbit, old ships powered up. Ghosts of the human fleet hidden for centuries, not to fight, to witness. "To tell the truth," Kale said. "That's our weapon now." As the students watched, the first human transmission in 300 years began broadcasting across the galaxy. Not a threat, not a demand, just a story, the real story, and somewhere in the dark between stars, the devourer stirred again. Hungry, confused, facing something it had never known before. Hope. The broadcast from New Terra spread like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every public channel in the galaxy carried the same message, a calm human voice telling the truth about the devourer, the war priests, and the lie behind the endless wars. At first, most dismissed it as a hoax, a trick by rebels or mad exiles. But then came the evidence. Unedited battle logs, censored data from Helios Drift, and the emotional imprints Lyra had recorded from the Resolute. The truth was too detailed, too consistent to ignore. On Varelia, riots broke out near the Academy. Students demanded answers. Professors refused to speak. The Conquered issued emergency orders calling the broadcast dangerous fiction and labeling all human signals as hostile. But doubt had taken root. Back on New Terra, Rail, Joran, and Lyra stayed with Admiral Kale and the quiet human community. They were no longer fugitives here. They were guests and now messengers. Kale taught them what the humans had learned in exile, that peace wasn't the absence of war but a choice made every day. The villagers farmed, built, taught children, and remembered. They kept watch on the stars, not with weapons but with hope. But the galaxy was not ready for peace. Reports flooded in from the outer systems. The conquered fleet had mobilized, not against rebels but against its own member worlds. Planets that questioned the official story were blockaded. Dissenting leaders vanished. The war priests, once hidden in shadows, now walked openly in black robes, their faces covered, their voices amplified across official channels. The devourer stirs, they declared. Only through unity in battle can we keep it chained. It was a lie, but a powerful one. Fear spread faster than truth. One evening, as the three students sat with Kale under a sky full of unfamiliar stars, a priority alert flashed on the village's main console. A conquered warship, massive, armed, and bearing the seal of the High Seer, had entered the system. It did not attack. It hovered in orbit, silent. "They want to talk," Joran said, wary. "Or trap us," Lyra added. Kale stood slowly. "No, they want to see for themselves." He turned to Rail. "You found the truth. You must face them with it." The next morning, a shuttle descended from the warship. Alone, cloaked and unarmed, the High Seer of the War Priests stepped onto New Terra's soil. They were ancient, their species unknown, their form wrapped in layered robes that shimmered like starlight. Their voice when they spoke was soft but carried weight. "I have watched your broadcast," the Seer said. "I have read your data. I have felt the silence you created." Rail stepped forward. "Then you know it's true." The Seer nodded. "We have known for 10,000 years." Silence fell over the group. "You knew?" Joran asked, stunned. "And you still fed it?" "We had no choice," the Seer replied. "The Devourer is not evil. It simply is. Like gravity, like time, if left unfed, it does not sleep, it rages. In the Age of Shattering, before our order began, it consumed 3 star systems in a single cycle. Billions died. Civilizations turned to dust. We learned that a steady diet of controlled conflict keeps it calm." Lyra shook her head. "So you made war a ritual. You turned pain into policy." "Yes," the Seer admitted. "We became jailers of a hunger we could not kill. The Conquered was built on this truth, but hidden, so the people would fight without despair. If soldiers knew they were feeding a monster, they would break." Kyle spoke then. "But humans broke anyway. Not from despair, from clarity. We saw the pattern, and we chose to stop." The Seer turned to him. "You risked everything. You could have awakened the Devourer fully." "We gambled on mercy," Kale said. "And it worked. For 300 years it slept. That proves it can be starved." The Seer was quiet for a long time. Then they said, "It stirs again. Not from hunger, but from fear. Your broadcast has caused chaos. Worlds are arming. Old enemies are clashing. The Devourer senses the rising fear. It is waking faster than before." Rail felt a chill. "So the truth made it worse?" "No," the Seer said. "The truth is the only cure, but it must be paired with action. Words alone will not feed peace. Only deeds can." They looked at the 3 students. "You uncovered the lie. Now you must help build the new truth." The Seer offered a choice. Return to the heart of the Concord, the ancient orbital temple where the war priests had guided galactic war for millennia, and stand before the Council of Species. There, with the Seer's testimony and the human evidence, they could force a reckoning. But it would be dangerous. Many would call them traitors. Some would try to kill them. "If you go," the Seer said, "you may not return. But if you stay, the Devourer will rise, and this time, no silence field will save us." That night, the students talked under the trees. Joran feared it was a trap. Lyra worried their presence would only cause more fear. Rael remembered the war priest who died at the Silent Spire, and the stone that still pulsed in their pocket. "We have to go," Rael said. "Not to fight. To witness." Kale gave them a small device, a final gift. "It holds every human memory of peace, every act of mercy, every child's laugh from New Terra. If they won't listen to reason, let them feel what we chose." 2 days later, aboard the Seer's warship, they left New Terra behind. The journey was silent. The crew avoided them, eyes downcast. Even the war priests were afraid. When they arrived at the orbital temple, a vast ring of black stone floating above a dead star, the council was already gathered. Hundreds of species, their leaders seated in a great chamber lit by cold blue flames. At the center stood the conquered high command, faces grim. The seer stepped forward first. "I bring truth," they said, "and those who uncovered it." Rael, Joran, and Lyra walked into the chamber. Murmurs rose. Some shouted accusations, others wept. A Zelosian elder stood and bowed, a gesture of deep respect. The humans had buried their dead with honor. They had never forgotten. The seer spoke for hours, revealing the full history of the devourer, the cycles, the lies. Then Rael played the recordings. Lyra shared her emotional readings. Joran presented the data, but it was Kale's device that changed everything. When activated, it didn't show images or sound. It projected feelings, pure, unfiltered empathy. The room filled with the warmth of a human home, the joy of a harvest, the quiet courage of choosing not to fight. For the first time, the leaders felt what peace truly was, not weakness, but strength. Then, from the back of the chamber, a young Cathari student, barely older than Rael, stood up. "My name is Tay," they said, voice shaking. "I accessed the same file Rael did. I thought I was alone. But I'm not. None of us are." One by one, others stood. Students, soldiers, even a Concord general. They had all felt the lie. They had all hoped for something better. The High Command tried to silence them, but the tide had turned. As the chamber erupted in debate, the seer turned to Rael. "The devourer still stirs, but now it faces something new." "What?" Rael asked. "A galaxy that remembers it can choose." Outside the temple, in the void between stars, the distortion grew, but slower now. As if confused, as if listening, the war was not over. But for the first time in 10,000 years, it had a chance to end not with blood, but with understanding. And the students who dared to look past the official story stood at the center of it all, not as heroes, but as witnesses to a truth too dangerous to forget, and too precious to lose. The chaos did not end in the temple, it spread. Across the galaxy, worlds that had spent centuries preparing for war now faced a harder task, learning how to stop. Some refused. Hardliners in the Concord military declared the broadcast a human trick and launched attacks on neutral systems, hoping to reignite the old cycles. Others, inspired by the truth, laid down their weapons and demanded change. The devourer, caught between rising fear and growing hope, pulsed in the void like a storm unsure which way to blow. Rael, Joran, and Lyra were no longer just students. They were symbols. Some called them saviors, others called them traitors. The Concord High Command placed a bounty on their heads, but it was ignored by half the fleet. Even among soldiers, doubt had taken root. How could they fight when they knew the enemy was a lie? The three stayed with the High Seer aboard the orbital temple, protected by ancient laws that shielded truth-seekers. But they knew they could not hide forever. The real battle was not in council chambers. It was in the hearts of ordinary beings across the stars. One night, as they watched the stars from the temple's observation deck, the seer joined them. "The devourer grows restless," they said. "It senses the shift. If enough choose peace, it will fade. But if fear wins, it will consume everything." "What can we do?" Lyra asked. "Speak," the seer replied. "Not to leaders, to the people," so they began. Using the temple's open channels, they broadcast simple messages, not full histories, not complex data, but stories. A human farmer sharing seeds with a former enemy, a Xylosian child learning Cathari songs, a hive cluster worker repairing a Selunite ship without being asked. Small acts, quiet courage, the kind of peace that grows in silence. The messages spread, slowly at first, then faster. On mining colonies, in trade hubs, on forgotten outposts, beings began to question. Why fight? Who truly benefits? And what if there is another way? Then came the signal no one expected. From deep in the outer rim, a single beacon activated, old, human, and strong. It pulsed once, then repeated a code known only to those who lived through Helios Drift. Admiral Kale's voice followed, calm and clear. "We are here. We remember, and we are ready to help." Across the galaxy, hidden human outposts responded, not with weapons, with aid. Medical ships, food transports, engineers, teachers, all flying the old Terran flag, not as warriors, but as neighbors. They offered no demands, only hands. The conquered tried to stop them. Warships intercepted human vessels. But when they saw medics treating wounded soldiers from both sides or engineers rebuilding a bombed school, many captains refused to fire. Some even joined them. Back at the temple, Rail received a private message. It was from their homeworld. Their family, once ashamed of their rebellious child, now wrote with pride. Other students from the Varelian Academy sent word too, hundreds of them forming study groups to teach the real history. The lie was crumbling, but the devourer would not go quietly. A massive distortion wave erupted near the heart of the conquered, a surge of raw conflict energy. Planets reported nightmares, sudden rage, unexplained violence. The devourer was lashing out, feeding on the fear of change. "We must act now," the seer said, "before it takes hold." They revealed a final secret. Deep within the temple was a resonance chamber built by the first war priests. It could amplify a single thought, a single feeling across the entire galaxy, but it required a living mind to channel it, and the risk was great. The mind could be lost, consumed by the very force it sought to calm. "I'll do it," Rail said. "No," Lyra said gently. "It must be all of us," Joran nodded. Together, the seer agreed. 3 minds linked would be stronger than one. They entered the chamber, a round room with walls of polished obsidian. In the center floated a crystal, humming with ancient power. As they joined hands, the seer activated the system. At first nothing, then pain. The devourer's hunger crashed into them like a wave. Centuries of screams, battles, dying stars. Rail saw the Resolute explode again. Joran relived the Hive's darkest war. Lyra felt every grave dug in silence, but they held on, and they pushed back, not with force but with memory. They showed the devourer what it had never known, a mother singing to her child. Friends sharing a meal after a long day, enemies choosing to talk instead of fight. The quiet joy of planting a seed and watching it grow. The chamber shook. The crystal glowed white-hot. Across the galaxy, every being, human, Cathari, Xylosian, Hive, Selunite, and more, felt it. Not a voice, not a command. A feeling, deep, calm, and true. You do not have to feed the fear. The distortion wave faltered. The nightmare stopped. The rage faded. In the void, the devourer did not die. It simply slept, not because it was defeated, but because it was no longer needed. When Rail, Joran, and Lyra opened their eyes, they were exhausted but whole. The seer bowed deeply. "You did what we could not. You offered it peace." News spread fast. The fighting stopped, not by treaty but by choice. Fleet stood down. Borders opened. The conquered, shaken to its core, began to reform, not as a war machine but as a council of equals. The 3 students could have stayed as honored guests, but they chose to leave. They took a small ship, not a war vessel, not a relic, just a simple craft, and set course for the stars. Their mission was no longer to uncover truth, but to help others live it. On New Terra, Admiral Kale watched their ship vanish into the distance. He smiled. Humanity had not returned to fight. They had returned to remind the galaxy that peace is not weakness. It is the bravest choice of all. And somewhere in a quiet corner of the academy they once called home, a new file appeared in the public archives. No clearance needed, no redactions, just a title: The Real Reason Humans Were Banned from Galactic War. Inside, the full story waited, for anyone brave enough to read it. The students were gone, but their work lived on. Not in monuments or medals, but in every hand that chose not to strike, every voice that chose to listen, and every heart that remembered. The war ended not with a bang, but with a whisper of mercy, and that whisper was enough.